Earlier in this morning's sessions, we've been talking a lot about innovation and the revolutionizing of technology and how that plays a part in smart cities. And our panel today is going to talk about transport and mobility, which I think is a key factor in building smart cities. And we're going to try and address, hopefully through the course of our discussion, how much more needs to be done in mobility and connectivity to get ourselves to the level required of smart cities. So with that, I'm going to start with you, Colin. You're doing something very exciting with Hyperloop One. For those in the audience who maybe aren't as aware of what your company is endeavoring to do, could you just briefly explain?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, thank you to Bloomberg for having me here today. It's been a great series of panels. So at Virgin Hyperloop One, what we're doing is delivering the fifth mode of transportation, as we refer to it. So on a high level, we are building a tube where we remove the air from inside the tube, creating a zero-drag environment. We then use an electric motor to drive our pod, which carries anywhere from 12 to 20 people. And we use a magnetic levitation to, a magnetic process to levitate and guide the pod as well. So ideally, what we're trying to do is bring airline speeds down to ground level at the cost of public transportation, because this will not be a scalable technology if we're charging premium rates. So we want to be on par with any mode of public transport. And so our big vision, as we've said, for Southeast Asia, for example, is being able to run people from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur in about 22 to 25 minutes, and in another just under an hour up to Bangkok. So what we do then is create this kind of Southeast Asian corridor of tech and innovation and really drive this place to be, continuing to be the leader in fourth generation technologies. If you look at cities like Dubai, they look to places like Singapore to set the standard of what things are going to be. And so we really see Hyperloop as a way for this region to leapfrog. And, I would have to say I was really pleased a few weeks ago when I saw the news about the high-speed rail project, because to me, it seems so backwards for a region like this to install 100-year-old technology when you have new technologies, whether it be Hyperloop, VTOL, autonomous vehicles, to connect these two core cities. So I think that's where we are in the market today.
And you mentioned that this is a new technology, something out of a Jetsons movie. You're just traveling through tubes. I never thought that'd be possible. But what are some of the challenges you face in getting this kind of thing off the ground? Because it's not a proven concept yet. You have a test track in Nevada, but elaborate.
Yeah, so it is not futuristic. It's happening today. We have built our test facility in Nevada. We've run and tested the system in its entirety. And what we're doing now is working with a few select governments to build a scaled-up version of our testing facility in-country. So not only are we, again, building a transportation system, but we're localizing, we're transferring the knowledge to bring these high-tech jobs to these developing countries. And so right now, what we want to do is let the world know that this is happening, so that things like the link between Kuala Lumpur and Singapore don't become a high-speed rail. Because as long as people think that this is Jetsons or the future, they're not going to look at it with seriousness.
Okay. And just sticking with that new technology, Yan, you operate an electric vehicle company, electric scooter company. That technology is already existing, but we don't see en masse adoption where people across the world are using it, just in select countries, select places. What more do you think needs to be done in order to promote that kind of mode of transport?
I think good question. Again, thanks Bloomberg for this opportunity. Different with Hyperloop was focused from city to city. I think new technology, we focus actually urban mobility, basically for people to travel within the cities. We look at data where about 60 to 70% of people actually travel alone within the city on an average distance about 10 kilometers. So we're just looking at what's sort of the best solution right now for individual travelers. And in reality, actually, we see a lot of two-wheelers on the street, right? They're scooters, not electric. Like in Southeast Asia, India, they're about, on an annual basis, there are about 50 million 50 million petrol scooters being sold in those areas, right? In China, there are about 30 million electric scooters currently right now lead-acid battery-based sold in China. So worldwide, there's about close to 100 million of what we call two-wheelers sold on the street, where people are actually using this to travel in the city. But we're looking at a different way of approaching this, actually offering people a smart electric scooter. It's smart, it's always connected. You can actually have all the information on your phone. And it's electric, it's a lithium battery-based, actually using similar as a technology that Tesla use. The battery very portable, where actually you can take the battery and take it, take to your apartment and charge within 3 hours, and it actually can give you a driving distance of 100 kilometers on one charge. And more importantly, I think for all the urbanites, they want something actually beautiful design, such that when they travel, they want to travel within style, right? So we are actually the only what we call only transportation device that in the last 20 years have won all 7 international design awards, basically from Red Dot to IF to IDEA to G-Mark, all 7 of them. So this is something that we think is a beautifully product designed, actually well suitable for consumer needs, and that actually drives adoption. So we're the largest right now worldwide with more than 400,000 units sold.
And speaking about electric vehicles, you mentioned earlier when we had a chat that your scooters are actually very consumer friendly because you remove the battery. You don't have to find a charging point, a plug point. Could you just elaborate on that, what you mean by making that user friendly to the consumers?
No, I think that part is very important. That's the difference of a lithium battery versus a traditional lead acid battery technology, which has been existed for 20 plus years. With the lithium batteries, actually, what you get is actually the battery pack can be anywhere between 5 kilo to 10 kilo of weight, average about 6 to 7 kilos. So it's actually very easy for consumers to take the battery pack out of scooter and take you to your apartment or anywhere, right, and then plug into the wall and just charge it. And we think this actually offers user freedom. It's actually, they don't need to find places to figure out how to charge the battery or charge the entire scooter. They can just simply take the battery home. And this is, I think, is one technology that actually drives this adoption.
And moving on to you, Rene. So we've talked about these futuristic technologies, or hopefully technologies that won't be too far off. And you run AC Infrastructure, which is a huge infrastructure company in Manila. And you build, highways, expressways, railways, all those kinds of things. And in a country like the Philippines, which is obviously growing at a great rate, there's still a lag in terms of the supply and demand of infrastructure. What do you think needs to be done to address those issues?
Well, we're trying to address the lag in the context of supply. But I believe there are 3 things about transport in urban megacities in Asia for the future. It has to be integrated, meaning from my device, I can plan my whole trip, my first mile, my trunk, or my spine movement, whether it's light rail, subway, and my last mile, including the other options, whether personal mobility devices, 37 degrees centigrade, you don't like to walk in Manila, but if I can hop on something that's going to get me there faster, so it works. Integration technology is available. It's not going to be, it may happen, in some places it's already happening. Integration will result in choices, meaning today, if I have a meeting, I have a lunch meeting, I will check first Waze, how long it will take me to drive there. I check Grab, how long it will take me to have somebody bring me there. And, well, I can check on Google Maps how long it will take for me to walk there. And 50% of the time today, it makes more sense to walk. My only problem is I sweat, and you can't take a shower before lunch, right? I mean, it's okay to walk to the office or to ride a bike to the office, but meetings, you kind of need to make it work. That is why it has to be integrated. Integrated results in choices. I'm talking to our light. We operate the oldest line in Manila. Our on-time schedules is at 99+%. Waiting time is down, but I'm asking our CEO, I need CCTV on every train station, which counts people, so that we're going to give people a chance to decide, do I go to this station or that station, depending on how much more time I need to wait and what's the loading. So the choices and the integration result in optimization. People will eventually be able to choose what's the best way for me to go from here to there. Do I walk? Do I ride a bike for the first mile? Do I get Grab? But, okay, a lot of the technologies are there today. The data needs to be scrubbed, and real-time data becomes very, very precious because, okay, so algorithm tells you, based on last week's volume, it's going to take this much time to travel from here to there by car. But if you had real-time information running on real-time metrics already tells you today it's going to take you 4 minutes and 32 seconds to travel from this point to this point, then you can optimize. Why do we need all these things? When you have a city with a daytime population of between 12 to 13 million, a nighttime population of between 12 to 13 million, and a daytime population of 16 million, you don't have much choice, and that's the reality we have in Asia. We need to move people faster, better, velocity, 11,000 kilometers an hour, but I only need to take them 2 kilometers, so it will take me longer to accelerate. But you come in and give me personal mobility devices. Someday somebody will invent a way to fly, I don't know, but the intention is a city with millions of people, space limitations, resource limitations, you really need to integrate, to optimize, allowing people choices.
And just talking about, we mentioned the Philippines, but Southeast Asia, a region of 600 million people, growing middle class, definitely clocking stellar growth rates. How does that, to me it would seem it's a prime target for technologies like electric vehicles and Hyperloop. How does that appeal to you guys? Any plans for the region specifically?
Big plans for this region. I think this is one of the reasons we are here. So we actually start our business operations in Thailand as well as Malaysia. We're coming to Singapore soon, and it's really this area where, yes, cities are congested. There are a lot of people living in the city. There are many people who want to travel travel freely in the city, and there are not a lot of options. I think just as we discussed, there has to be integrated solutions, and we believe that a personal mobility solution is one of the needs. So this is why we're here.
Can you, Colin?
Yeah, one of our big projects right now is in India, and that's because there's so many people and the density is so high and the ridership is so high. And another part of the world where that exists is here in Southeast Asia. And so for us, we're looking for those opportunities where we can actually line up private financing for the projects because the fare box ridership is so high. And so looking at this link, for example, between Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, and Bangkok, it unlocks huge amounts of potential population growth in those areas because these cities are swelling. And if you can then get from here to Kuala Lumpur in 25 minutes, well, you can actually live anywhere along the line. And so again, for us, trying to find these opportunities where the density is really high between two big cities, that we can then create the connection between that and sort of develop these polycentric regions rather than these mega cities that are disconnected.
And in terms of timeline, I think that your company mentioned it was 2021 or 2022. Are we still on track for that?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be breaking ground sometime in mid-2019 on some of our first projects. And then what we'd like to see happening is 2021, 2022, the system will be up and running, going through regulatory process. The regulatory is a really, really big component of this. And I'm sure it's the same with you guys as well. And a lot of the entrepreneurs out here is finding that balance between speed and implementation of the system while also dealing with sometimes the bureaucracies that come with the regulatory environment. And so what we've tried to do is put together a regulatory body called our International Standards Working Group, comprised of 8 to 10 different countries, and their authorities on safety and transport there.
And what's the number one thing they bring up to you as a concern when you talk to these regulators in implementing this technology?
The fact that it's a completely unproven technology with people inside of it. So yes, we've proven it as a technology itself, but we have not put a passenger in it. Until that time, regulators are naturally hesitant. But what our goal has been is to develop a collaborative process with regulators and ourselves so that together we can write the policies and codes for what Hyperloop is going to be over the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think for us, actually, the government regulations that place a favor on electric vehicles and electric scooters. For example, India has a subsidy program for manufacturers and the retailers, such that they almost gave $200 US if they purchase an electric scooter versus a petrol one. Because the beauty of the electric scooter is it does reduce carbon emissions. It does make the air cleaner. I think it's we basically we heard their news about Southeast Asia's country in Southeast Asia is trying to plan, make the similar moves, and obviously we're waiting that to be happen. But I think that's ought to be happen. It was everything moving from petrol to electric. This is an environmental friendly solution.
Mm-hmm. And Rene, in the infrastructure space,
government will always worry about the demographically disadvantaged. A megacity in Asia, except Singapore, has a wider distribution of demographics. Our line 1 in Manila, 70% are blue-collar workers who ride it, the 30% office workers. But today you will find CEOs riding our line because of traffic. But government will always say, what real estate prices does is it pushes the the disadvantaged farther away from the city, right? I mean, they can't afford the real estate prices, whether it's rental or owning, so they end up living farther away. So you need to provide that kind of a link at very reasonable prices for that. Now, are we saying that you only worry about them? That's why the regulatory role has always been about controlling fare box. Now, in our discussions with government, it's always been governments will spend for the capex, the rail, but the fare box must be sustainable for the O&M and the rolling stock. So same challenge will be for Hyperloop. You need to make sure that the cost to the person is reasonable. In Asian cities, we don't have a choice. We can't just worry about the top 10%. We need to worry about the 80%, or actually the most number of users for any mass transit format. So governments will push you in that direction, but it's still very viable with the right solutions, and we believe technology will, because of the choices and the optimization that technology will allow people across all income levels to take advantage. If you want a cheaper ride, you wake up an hour earlier on a non-congested environment, then you have peak pricing instead of standard pricing for your rail. You can start playing around early morning rates and so on and so forth. Same thing. Last mile, I have 1 kilometer to go. Do I take Grab? Do I take a personal mobility device, or do I just walk anyway? I still have time. And by the way, the people who are at the lower demographic levels, they're the ones that cannot afford to be late. And they're the ones that have really appreciated the fact that we've made our line more reliable, is because instead of having to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to be able to be sure to be at work by 8 o'clock, the fact that our trains are more reliable and on time allows them an hour more of sleep or 2 hours more with family. And they're the ones that can't afford, because 15 minutes late, they normally get a salary deduction already. A manager doesn't have that problem. And yet the manager is willing to ride because he knows he better be in the office in time. Mm-hmm. The boss is going to be looking for him.
So in building these kinds of infrastructure and the technologies that you speak about, hundreds of millions of dollars are needed for this. So in terms of getting investors to buy into your ideas and get these projects off the ground and then not passing off those costs to the consumers, how is Hyperloop kind of tackling that situation?
In terms of our projects, or the company itself and raising money for the company?
Company itself.
So we were very fortunate, obviously, to get some really big supporters early on that believed in our idea. And we had a co-founder, Josh Geigel, who had a great vision for what this company could be. And I think for us, being able to find opportunities like India, like Saudi Arabia, working with some of these sovereign wealth funds that are out there now to try to bring these technologies forward. I mean, let's just take Saudi Arabia, for example. They're investing huge amounts of capital into several different fourth-generation technologies because they know they have to move this dependence off of oil. These are exactly the kinds of countries and funds that we want to partner with, that need to bring these opportunities forward, that must leapfrog. Because in Saudi, if you were to build a rail project, for example, it's another 100 years before you're looking at a new mode of transport.
Mm-hmm. And Rene, in terms of getting investors into infrastructure projects?
When in the Philippines, there's a lot of liquidity in the market, and demand is so pent up and supply is so bad, it's easy to look for money. We recently submitted an unsolicited proposal, 7 of us, to fix NAIA Airport, our international airport. Originally designed for 30 million, upgraded to 31 million, but in 2017, we did 42 million. So it badly needs to be fixed. We stepped in and said, the 7 of us will come together to fix it. In 2 years' time, we'll bring it up to 47 million, another 2 years to 65. Question was, is there going to be a problem with equity? No, we were oversubscribed. 3 other conglomerates said, can we join you? But 10 conglomerates in one venture is a bit tough. On the funding side, there's a lot of people who are saying, yes, we're willing to, because they see that the demand is so big that market risk is very minimal. So if you can create the business model or a concession framework where the user fee, allows you to recover the investment plus a reasonable return, I see a lot of funding opportunities.
And we're just about out of time almost, but I'm just going to put this question out to all of you. What do you see happening in the transport and mobility space in the next 10 years that people here can look forward to? Hyperloop, electric vehicle uptake, infrastructure projects?
I think transport integrates with the rest of the lifestyle. So a personal digital device which will wake me up in the morning because it knows exactly how long it takes for me to brush my teeth, shower, and get dressed. By the time I get down the apartment, there's an autonomous electric vehicle waiting for me. I tap my device. It knows exactly where to bring me. By the way, my train ticket has been booked. I know what seat I'm on. When I walk off the electric vehicle, the walking time from the vehicle bay to the platform has been pre-computed. When I get there, in 2 seconds, the train is there. I board it. I get off. When I get off the train, I know exactly a number of an autonomous electric vehicle waiting for me to take me to my office, and I'm in time for my meeting. I arrive in the office at 7:59 and 30 seconds for an 8 o'clock meeting.
And Yin?
I think besides the integrated solutions, I think one part of it, I do believe in the technology and technology advances. Besides the battery technology we're talking about to extend the travel days, distance, and range, there is actually a big data in play as well. It's a big data allow you to actually optimize algorithm, optimize the routes. I mean, for us, at NU, we have more than 400,000 scooters running on the street. We actually have all our users accumulate about 1.4 billion kilometers of riding distance. So that's the data we have. But we're just one company. Now think about combining those data across different industries, across different companies in urban mobility. Then how do we actually capitalize that data and make this whole urban travel, cross-city travels more efficient? I think it has to be a solution on that as well.
And Colin, Hyperloop?
Yeah, I would say, just like we had broadband, in the 80s and 90s, Hyperloop is a physical broadband. And instead of moving packets of, data, we're moving packets of people. And so we have to look at how are we going to integrate with, just as we said, these scooters, these autonomous vehicles, so that what Hyperloop becomes is a range extender for an autonomous vehicle for people.